Vyasa means who has penetrated enough. Vyasa is not a name. Vyasa means who has penetrated enough. Penetrated enough to understand, segregate and pass it on. That's where all teachers are called Vyasa. His original name is not Vyasa is not his original name. His original name is Krishna Dvaipayana is his original name. What was happening? When the society or the individual becomes indulgent, dullness sets in. Intelligence will develop, but dullness will set in. That's where you find people are more and more intelligent but very dull. People are intelligent. You ask him to write an essay, he will write an essay. Ask him to score marks, he will score marks. But so dull. Dullness sets in. So at the time of Vyasa, dullness has set in. What's the dullness? The dullness is the inability. The people are not able to understand the knowledge, digest the knowledge and transfer it. What you need to understand the background. The background was there was no written textbooks. All this has to be done through all the knowledge has to be maintained through a oral tradition of memorizing and passing it on. Memorizing and passing it on. With all the books on hand, we are getting confused. With all the books on hand, we are getting confused. In one gadget, the whole world books can be put, still there is a confusion. So, if Vyasa was alive today, he won't even tell us that he is Vyasa. He will quietly walk out. He won't even tell us. So, he saw the deterioration. So, when he saw the deterioration, he picked up. He divided the Vedas into 4. Vedas were not written by Vyasa. Vedas was existing even before Vyasa. Vedas were existing even before Vyasa. All that he did was to segregate them into 4 and gave it to 4 of his disciples. Said that this portion belongs to you, this portion belongs to you. Your duty is to keep that knowledge alive, pass it on to the next generation. Thus, he made a wonderful plan of how to keep this knowledge alive. Why it was done is because the grasping capacity of the human being becoming less. Dullness, a general dullness. So what he did, he divided the Vedas into 4. First thing that you need to understand about the Vedas is, we say 4 Vedas. You think Vedas means 4 textbooks. It's not 4 textbooks. The material is the same in all the books. 90% of the material is common to all the books. Then why call it as 4? Why can't you just call it as one book and just leave it at that? Why do you have to call it as 4? He called it as 4 because of the difficulty in the oral tradition. The way in which it was chanted makes the difference. When we think of 4 books, we think it as 4 different books. It's not 4 different books. Material is the same, the 4 ways in which it was It was chanted. The Samaveda is a lyrical way of chanting the same thing. The Yajurveda is a different way of chanting the same thing. Rig Veda is more a different way. But then the material is the... Why it was done like that? Because of that difficulty. What was the difficulty? The knowledge can be kept alive only through oral tradition. So he called his 4 disciples and said, this is how you people have to continue. Thus formed the lineage. Lineage means what we call as Gotras. Thus formed the Gotras. So one portion of Vedas was allocated to one group and said, your job is to at least keep, minimum is to keep this portion alive, and then do whatever you can read the entire stuff. That's where you find names Dvivedi, Trivedi, Chaturvedi. Dvivedi means master 2 Vedas. Trivedi means master 3 Vedas. Chaturvedi means master 4 Vedas. These are all relation to that. You understand? Therefore, what was happening was, how he minimum was given to one group and said, this you keep it alive. This you keep it alive. A master plan to keep the knowledge alive was his idea. All the disciples who are benefited by the knowledge pay the respects to him on this day. That's why it's called Vyasa Purnima or Guru Purnima. Why we say Vyasa is because of this reason. He segregated it, gave it to 4 and said, you keep it alive. You keep it alive. Number 1. Second aspect of the same knowledge that he did was, having understood the grasping capacity has come low. When the grasping capacity has come low, you can understand only stories. You cannot understand the concepts, but you can understand stories. So what he did, he wrote the Puranas. He wrote the Puranas, and then he wrote the Itihasa, Mahabharata. Bhagavad Gita is portion of that Mahabharata. Then came the book, just pure devotion, just pure emotion, that's all. Bhagavatam. He wrote that. And then he went on to write Brahma Sutras, a commentary on Upanishads, texts on Upanishads, what he called as Brahma Sutras. And Brahma Sutras start like this: Atato Brahma Jignasa. Now let us study about now. Means what? The word now is an indication that you are prepared enough. Otherwise, how can you start the textbook by saying, now let us inquire into the nature of Brahman. Athato Brahma Jignasa. Now let us inquire into Brahman. Meaning, done all this, sufficiently inquired, sufficiently evolved to understand Brahman. To them, he wrote this Brahma Sutras. Phenomenal work. Because of this phenomenal work, he was given the title Vyasa. His name is not Vyasa. Vyasa means title. Vyasa is not the name. Vyasa is the title. But his original name is Krishna Dvaipayana. Like when they do the ritual, they start when they do the rituals, the Rishi Parampara prayer starts like this: Krishna Dvaipayanadayaha. They start. Adayaha means starts from that. And wonderful is this tradition. Wonderful is that tradition. To keep the knowledge alive, 2 things are necessary. keeping the knowledge alive doesn't happen through keeping the book safe. You can't keep the books safe because after a period of time it will get eaten up. It will get eaten up. You can keep the books alive, but it will get eaten up. The way to keep the knowledge alive is two processes. One is the process of enquiry, understanding. Deeper than that is knowledge is kept alive by the direct experience. Two ways. So he created a system where people can mechanically at least keep the knowledge in the form of chanting, memorizing, passing it on to the next generation. Also there was a built-in system to help people to realize. And knowledge is kept alive not by the books, not by this, but by the realized masters. Knowledge is kept alive by those realized masters, by those galaxy. And Guru Purnima, we collectively pay homage to all the teachers. Teacher becomes valuable only when the knowledge is valuable. Teacher is valuable only when the knowledge is valuable. When the knowledge is not so valuable, teacher looks very... School looks very important. Why? Why it looks so important? University looks very, very important. Why? It looks important because the knowledge is important. Therefore, the knowledge comes, it's the knowledge that comes first. And there is this unbroken lineage of Guru Sishya Parampara that kept this knowledge alive. Extraordinary sacrifices have been made to keep this knowledge alive, which we don't understand now. Today, because we have no clue to the effort that goes behind knowledge. Because knowledge is available in knowledge today. Knowledge is available in a machine. And we are comfortable with machines. You can't be comfortable with the teacher because teacher will not cater to you. Teacher will say, if you come late, get out of the class. Correct? You go late, what the teacher will do? Get out of the machine. You can access that. Machine, you can access that. Your comfort, your convenience. You understand? Knowledge is not kept through the books. Knowledge is always maintained through the teacher. The teacher becomes valuable only when the knowledge is important, because he is the carrier of knowledge. Number 3. Teacher, Guru, Acharya. See, there are two words. One is Guru, another is Acharya. Everyone is a Guru. Everyone is a Guru. Two words. The word Acharya and the word Guru. And one man who had both the titles. He is Jagat Guru Shankaracharya. He had both the titles to him. Wonderful is that man. Because he got, either you have the title Acharya, you have the title Guru. He had, people gave him both the titles. He is Jagat Guru and Acharya also. Acharya. The word Acharya comes from the root Chara. Charati. It comes from the root Chara. Chara means, the Sanskrit word Chara means walking. It means walking. It comes from the root. Acharya means one who has walked it, one who has walked the path. Not only he has walked the path, he can take you also, he can lead you also into that path. That's why he is called. He knows it. Not only he knows it, he knows how to take the other. That's why he is called Acharya. Not a bookish knowledge. It's not that he reads from 10 books, comes and gives a discourse. He is a pracharak, not an acharya. Today, pracharaks are seen as acharya. Yeah. I feel very embarrassed. Vijay calls me acharya. I say pracharak na kupanapa, you should not call acharya. Yeah. There is a difference. Whoever speaks looks like an. So there is a pracharak, preacher. A preacher need not have any experience. Preacher will not know how to guide. He knows only how to parrot. Yeah, he knows only how to parrot. Acharya is one who has walked the path by himself. Not only he has walked, he can lead you also onto the path. Like Ramatirtha says, come with me, I'll take you shoulder to shoulder, I'll take you. Walk with me, he says. He gives that assurance because he is the Acharya. Very poetic is this word, Acharya. Another word is Guru. Another word is Guru. Guru means huge, big. The Sanskrit word Guru means huge, big. Today, straight away we think Guru means teacher. The Sanskrit word Guru means huge, big. Like the heaviest planet is called. There are in the galaxy, the heaviest planet is called. What is it called? In English, it's called Jupiter. Sanskrit, Guru. Huge, big. Not that he is obese. Not in that sense. Huge, not in that sense. He is big, huge, big in wisdom. Can digest everything. He is big, huge. Anything huge, anything big comforts you straight away. That's where you go to the beach, straight away there is a sense of wow. What is anything big gives you a sense of wonderment, relaxation. Good strain. You can go on watching it. No, at least even today I like watching the good strain. Even though how much ever noise it makes doesn't matter. Yeah. Dung, 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 it's so huge. Elephant. Children can never get tired of watching elephant. There is something deeply psychological in it. What is it? Anything huge, anything big creates the sense of wonderment, relaxes you instantly. Relaxes you instantly. In that sense, he is big, he is huge, because in comparison to that, you realize your insignificance. In comparison to that, you realize your insignificance, and relaxation is because you have realized your insignificance. Afterward, it won't stay for long. The ego will come back and bring the significance. How it will bring the significance? Now let me write a wonderful poetry about this experience. No, Now the ego wants to become, the moment you want to start writing poetry, the ego has started, because that relaxation. You understand? That's why he is called, in his presence, he makes you realize your insignificance. All others also make you realize your insignificance, but you get hurt at them. Every relationship, the other keeps on telling how insignificant you are to me, and you get hurt, and you get insulted, you get hurt. There is a fundamental difference here. There is a fundamental difference here. Are you able to understand the difference? He exposes your insignificance. He exposes you, and you revel in that. And you revel in that exposure. You don't get insulted. You don't feel insulted. You revel in that. You enjoy that. Because of what? Because of what? Anyone else does the same thing, you feel very insulted. You can't take that. What is the difference? There is a comfort in that relationship. There is a comfort in that relationship. What brings comfort in that relationship? First thing that brings comfort in a relationship is when you don't have the fear of being judged. When you don't have the fear of being judged, you become free. You have to be so huge, so big to relate to anyone like that. And here is a man who is doing that. That's why he is called Guru. So comfortable because there is no fear of being judged. Otherwise, there is always the fear of being judged, and you have to put a mask. You have to put a mask. And every mask that you put frustrates you, tires you, stresses you out, because every mask that you put is a lie, and you can't hold on to the lie for a long period of time. It will reveal itself. You understand? Therefore, what happens? You escape. Fundamental difference between other relationship and this relationship with the Guru. The first thing is there is no fear of being judged. There is no fear of being judged. You are accepted as you are. Not criticized, not condemned. He might not even say it, but the presence itself makes you feel, just the presence makes you feel, in that sense he is. The first thing is the fear of not being judged. Forget the Guru. Amongst friends, you are very comfortable. That which you can't share with your innermost, the closest family member, you can share with your friend. Why? What is the difference there? A friend is not going to, he might fight with you, he might fight with you, he might do everything with you, but then you are comfortable. Why? Because there is no fear of being judged. You are not judged. You are not judged at all. It creates such a comfort. It creates such a comfort. The day you start judging your own children, they start becoming uncomfortable with you. They start moving away. The day you become judgmental, others move away. And you judge based on your conditioning. You judge based on your ignorance. Your notions of right, wrong, good, bad. You judge people based on that, and the other moves away. That's where the blessed words. Judge not others. Judge not others. You have to be so huge, so big to do that. A Guru, fear of not being judged. Second thing, that relationship is so comfortable because fear of rejection doesn't happen. There is no fear of rejection. In all other relationships, there is a fear of rejection. Therefore, in order not to get rejected, you have to put on a mask. Again you have to put on a mask. Again you have to put on a mask. Because there is a fear of rejection. Therefore you have to put on a mask. Because there is a fear of being judged. There is a fear of being rejected. These two things you don't have to do in relation to a guru. That's why it's so relaxing. You don't have to, because there's no rejection. The very fact that he is serving, because he has accepted. Service happens only when you are accepted. You can't criticize, condemn, make a mincemeat and then serve. It doesn't work. Again I repeat. How do you know that it is not rejected? The very fact that he is sitting there serving us still is a proof that we are not rejected. So the very fact that he is present, serving, itself is the proof. What? We are accepted as we are. Not that you will be pampered to stay where you are. Please understand the difference. You are accepted as you are. Not that you will be pampered to stay where you are. He will make you walk the path. Because he has already walked the path and he knows how to make you walk. But then, to walk, a comfort has to be created first. And he creates that. A comfort has to be created. And he creates that comfort. He goes out of his way to create that comfort. That's why he is called big, huge. Big, huge doesn't mean he has so much of knowledge. He is not an encyclopedia. He might not even, that's where you find gurus, so many gurus who have not really known anything. Like Ramakrishna Paramahamsa was not a big reader. He doesn't know too much. In fact, Ramana Maharshi started reading books only. I used to wonder, that's the right way to first get enlightened and then read. First get enlightened and then read books. You read books, you will get stuck in the words, enlightenment will go. So he read, he was getting so bored. When people started talking, when people start talking, you get bored, no? When you are allowed to talk, you will not get bored. Have you noticed the difference? When you are allowed to talk, you will not get bored. Supposing if you are given the podium and say speak, I will run away first. I will run away. You understand? Big, not in terms of knowledge, information, because you have had gurus who are literally illiterates also. But then, giant intellects fall at their feet. What is it? Why they are so big is because, understand this, there are two types of knowing. All knowledges have these two aspects. One is knowing. To know something, you have to be separate from that. Then only you can know that. So all knowledges implies duality. This is slightly technical. Carefully follow. All knowledges implies duality, because the knower has to be separate from the known. The knower knows everything except himself. That is one type of knowledge, where you know everything except yourself. You will know the moon, you will know the Mars, you will know the neighbor, you will know how to fix the pipe, but you will not know anything about your own self. So there are two types. One is the subject, the knower, knowing. For you to know something, you have to be different from that. You have to be apart from that. All worldly knowledges have this problem of duality. You can know, but the knower can never be known. Because if the knower is known, who's knowing that? You get into that? Are you able to follow? That's where science says there is no such thing as subjective knowledge at all. All knowledges are objective alone. Because there is the knower. The knowledge that he has is fundamentally different. The knowledge that he has is fundamentally different. What is the difference? What is the difference? The knower is known, which you cannot understand, which you cannot theoretically understand. How is it? But then the opposite you can understand. What is the opposite? The knower is different from the known. When you say, I know, it implies duality. You are separate from the other. That's where to a point of extent where science goes to a point of extent where it says there is no such thing as consciousness and all. Consciousness is also a byproduct of chemistry. Just some chemical thing that has happened, it has come about. Why are you making a big? Why are you every Sunday? Why are you guys sitting and wasting time? Because it's a byproduct. Consciousness itself is a byproduct. When you take all knowledges as objective, the knowledge that he has is subjective. What is subjective? The knower is known. Where the duality? How do you understand this? You need an example, then only you can understand that. All knowledges are taught. This knowledge of subject is self-revealing. It is not taught. It's a fundamental knowledge. I need to learn A, B, C, D from. All other knowledges are taught. You cannot know it by yourself. Just as, conceive of this situation, conceive of this example, where a child is not allowed, where the child is not taught. Imagine a situation where the child is not taught, it will grow up. It will grow up in hunger, it will grow up in this, and when it reaches the age of 13, 15, the body will develop the capacity to reproduce also, but it will remain as an animal. It will remain as an. Therefore, one type of knowledge is where you have to be taught. This is the knowledge that Guru has is the knowledge that is self-revealing. It doesn't need any other knowledge to know it. It is self-revealing. Just as in the room, there is a candle light in the center. There is a candle light. That candle light reveals everything in the room. All the furnitures, everything in the room is revealed by the candle light. What reveals the candle light? What reveals the candle? Not another light. It reveals itself. It reveals itself. It's a fundamentally different type of light. It's a fundamentally different type. When the candlelight goes, the room becomes dark. When all the furniture from the room is removed, candlelight will still remain, because it is independent of any knowing. It knows itself. It's self-revealing. Number one. Number two, you have to know all this. Then only you will know why Guru is called huge, big. Why he is called huge, big. Otherwise you think, why is huge, big? Correct, sir. That's why they kept the right name only. They are all huge and big. Big egos they have, sir. The ego of the ordinary man is not comparable to the ego of the so-called spiritual man. In that sense, he is bigger. The first thing, it's self-revealing. The second thing is, it's beyond doubt. Second thing, brilliant is that man. What he has done to know all this, God only knows. So you can't get all other relationships, all other human beings falls in front of this one man. The whole thing goes into insignificance. Number one, self-revealing. Number two, it's beyond doubt. To understand this, everything in this world needs proof, because you can doubt everything. Are you able to follow? Everything in this world needs proof, because you can doubt everything. But you can't doubt the doubter, no? Everything else can be doubted, but the doubter remains beyond doubts, correct? Are you able to understand what I am saying? Guru Purnima, I don't know what to say. Something I have to confuse. Are you able to follow the second type of knowledge? Everything you need proof, because everything can be doubted. The very fact that you doubt it itself, it can't be proved. More you doubt, more complicated it becomes. Here is this knowledge which is beyond doubts, because you can't doubt yourself. See, I can doubt you, but I can't doubt myself. No, sir, I doubt myself now. You don't know what you are saying. You follow what I am saying? Fundamentally, is beyond. Here is the knowledge which is beyond doubts. That's why it's called pure knowledge. He's got these two things. What is that knowledge? Self-revealing, beyond doubts. I saw it. Can you doubt it? You are sitting here now. Can you doubt it? It can be a dream, no? Correct? Do you doubt it? Don't say yes, sir. If you say yes, now I feel very depressed. Yeah, I am thinking, no, kastapatti innalamo solinu irukrom, and say, I am doubting that, you are sleeping, nartham. You understand that? The doubter cannot be, because you cannot doubt. You can doubt everything, but you cannot doubt yourself. How can you do that? Wonderful is this knowledge that he has, which is huge, big. Number three, the knowledge is infinite. In that sense it's big. The knowledge that he has is infinite. Infinite doesn't mean like an encyclopedia library. You think it is like that. Oh, Abhina, he will know everything. How will he know everything? He knows only one thing. What? He knows one thing. What? He knows one thing. He has one thing. What? He has the candle light. Wherever he goes, he moves in light. Wherever we go, we move in darkness. Are you able to understand the difference? Wherever he goes, he moves in light. Wherever we go, we move in darkness. That's why we have to go to him for light. That's why we go to him for light. Asking him to say, please light us. Please light this. This is not very clear to me. Light this. This is not very clear to me. Like this. And he is not a master in anything, but he knows everything. In that sense, he is huge, big. Not knowing anything, he knows, but then he has known something so fundamentally different. So fundamentally different. He is a guru. And then he does the most miraculous thing, and then he says, I didn't do anything. Even before we do something, our ego becomes so big to say, I did it. Like, you write 4 sentences of your own. That will look more powerful than the complete works of Shakespeare, no? You write 1 sentence of your own, complete works of Shakespeare, which will look more powerful, more valuable. He does the greatest thing, the most impossible thing he does, and yet he says, I have not done anything. I have not done anything. In that sense, he is huge. He is big. Like he says, Guru is the doormat, he says. He is like the doormat. What is the role of the doormat? What is the role of the doormat? What is the role of the doormat? Takes your dirt and allows you to walk away. I will not take your dirt. I am not a doormat. Guru is the doormat, that's all. You understand? He says, because he takes the dirt. That which everyone rejects in you, he takes it. That which everyone rejects in you, he takes it. What is that everyone rejects in you? The ego. He takes that. Not only he takes that, see, when he says he takes that, he makes you aware of that. When he makes you aware of that, he doesn't cause pain. At the same time, he tells you how you can transcend also. It's not that he tells you that you are egoistic in a way where you feel like, where you get so hurt. That's where the emotion in front of the Guru is called inspiration, devotion. It's not hurt. The emotion in relation to the Guru is called inspiration, devotion, not hurt. If you are getting hurt now, then the other person has not yet become a Guru as far as you are concerned. Maybe he is a very intelligent man, we can go to him when we are in trouble, that's about it. But other than that doesn't mean anything. Follow? Seriya? In that sense he is Guru. He is Guru because he is doing that. What is he doing? That which you have to hide from others, you can reveal. That which you have to hide from others. Correct, no? You have to hide. Otherwise, all relationships will break. If you start saying exactly what's running in your mind, you cannot have relationship with anyone, no? Correct? You feel like screaming and telling your wife, get out of my life, but you can't tell her that, no. You have to put up on, you can't reveal. You can't reveal what is inside of you to others. That's where you have to put a mask. You have to put a mask. you have to put a mask. Here you can just reveal. You can just reveal yourself. Like the Sufi poem says, naked, he says. Just going naked. Not literally, please. Not literally. Just that revealing. Because we are so scared of revealing. We are used to hiding. We are used to hiding. And how we hide? We hide through language. We hide. We are used to hiding. Since we are so used to hiding, anything that reveals, anything revealing, we become very uncomfortable. That's why the real knowledge we become unavailable for, the true knowledge. And what is the nature of true knowledge? What is the nature of true knowledge? It's self-revealing. It reveals. And we are so comfortable in hiding. And he prepares you. How he prepares you? For this preparation you have to be eternally grateful to him, that's all. How he prepares you? He prepares you to receive the highest. Because the highest is not knowing. Highest is not understanding. The highest is a revelation. It reveals. So in order to receive that, in order to be ready for that, you should know how not to hide. But then, in every relationship, you have to hide. Don't go on expose. If you start saying exactly what you feel like to others, you will be rejected. Just as you will reject the other if they start telling you what they think about you. If everyone starts saying what they think, supposing if every one of you starts telling me what you actually think about me, I can't continue one more word. I have to assume what I am speaking wisely. You are all understanding what I am. Only with that assumption I can. Suppose you will say, no sir, we don't think of you like that. I feel then I will not know what to even. So you need to hide. Every relationship is based on hiding. That's where we say, I have to be true to a relationship. I have to be truthful to you can't be truthful to a relationship. Because all relationships survives only in hiding. Correct? Are you able to understand what I am saying? Here, he is so fundamentally different. Because in that sense he is huge. In that sense, Guru is huge, big. Lastly, anything huge, big, sometimes will scare you also. Sometimes will scare you. So suddenly he displays a height which really scares you. More predictable you make life, less scary it looks. That's why we try to make life as predictable as possible. Because when it can be predicted, less fear. Because you feel you have control. You follow? How foolishly the man lives. So now suddenly he shows certain things suddenly he shows something which is so unpredictable, you get completely confused, you get completely scared. You say, there is no, because according to you, there has to be, it has to be predictable. Life as such is, the truth of life is, he says, I am only revealing the truth of life, that's all. For that revelation, you feel grateful. So Guru Purnima is an occasion where, please understand, Guru Purnima is an occasion where the students who are benefited gather together and pay the respects. That's what is called Guru Purnima. Those who are benefited by the knowledge gather together to pay the respects, to express their gratitude. To express their gratitude. That occasion is called Guru Purnima. That's why why he is called a Guru is because of this. Both are one and the same. Guru, Acharya, both are one and the same. It has just sheer, just wonderful poetry, that's all. The moment you rip it open, it loses its, the moment you rip it open, it looks then it just becomes very ordinary words. Therefore, these two things they say, Guru, Acharya, they keep the mystical meaning. They keep some element of mystery is always kept associated with this. Because the moment it is ripped open, you feel, nothing there. What is the mystery? What is the mystery? The knower is a mystery. The known is never a mystery. The knower is always the knower, whose knowing everything is always a mystery. For an ignorant person, he gets mysterious about knowing. For a spiritual person, he is mysterious about the knower. The difference between the knower and the that's why he is called Guru. Huge, big. Remover of ignorance is the poetic meaning. Gu and Ru. Remover of ignorance. One ignorant man cannot remove the ignorance of another. Upanishads, blind leading the blind. One blind man cannot remove the ignorance of another person. In fact, he will keep you in ignorance. He will keep you in ignorance, because only when you are kept in ignorance, he can survive. Only when you are kept in ignorance, he can survive. In Bhajagovindam he says, Udara nimittam bahukrita veshaha. All these people who call themselves teachers, he says, it's all for the sake of the Udara nimittam bahukrita vesha. All this is vesha they put. Tragedy is duplicates are more appealing than the duplicates are always more appealing than the original, because original one you have to pay that much price. For the duplicate you can pay a far lower price and enjoy the benefits of the just that an apple and the symbol glass are in the phone is so expensive. Take that symbol out, it's only worth 5,000 rupees. And then someone will tell you, what? Just that sticker is not there. It's the same phone. You will also buy it, because you think you have become very wise. All the fellows who are buying it for 70,000, you can buy it for? How wise you are? The duplicates look always better than the original. Yeah. Shankar. Konar notes is always appealing than the textbook, no? Correct? Guides are always appealing than the textbook. Correct? Of the 100 students, 95 reads the guide only. Very few can read the book, because books are not so appealing. Guides are very appealing, easy. You understand? This is Guru Purnima. You can talk and talk and talk. Still you can't make justice to this word, Guru. Whole Janma you can talk, but still you can't give the full meaning, or not even the full meaning. You can't even convey 1% of that. And the only way to understand is to live with the Master. If you have lived with the Master, you will know all this. For which you should live with the Master. To live with the Master means you have to risk something. To live with the Master means you have to risk something. What is it that you have to risk? What is it that you have to risk? All that you have known, you have to leave behind. All that looks valuable to you, you have to leave behind. Then only you can. And unless you live with the Master, you can become a very intelligent man, but you will not become a disciple. That's where, if it is called Guru, the disciple is called Sishya. And Guru Purnima becomes meaningless if Sishya is not understood. It's not about the glory of the Guru. It's what the disciple has to do. Sishya comes from the root Siksha. Siksha means one who is willing to get corrected. Today, you want to correct those who are not willing. Correct? Correct, no? I want to change this person, sir. I want to help this person, sir. But then they are not. They are not willing. Who's a Sishya? A Sishya is one who willingly submits himself for correction. Who willingly submits himself for correction. When you willingly submit yourself for correction, then you are available to receive the highest. Otherwise, you want to correct because it's uncomfortable to you. Where all you want to correct the other, see those areas, you will be uncomfortable with. That's why you want to correct. No, I'm only interested in their welfare, sir. That's why I'm saying. Do you know what is welfare? To you in the first place. If you have known welfare lies here, what have you done to achieve that, realize that? If you have not achieved that, if you have not realized that, your primary obligation is to achieve that. That's why the teacher says, first attend to yourself. When he says that, you think it's becoming very selfish. Adipti sir, how can we attend to ourselves? We have to attend to. Suddenly you will become unselfish. When he says attend to yourself, you become. Suddenly you will talk the language of being very sacrificial, very unselfish. And then you will say, okay, go and help. You will try and attend to the areas which is very uncomfortable to you. Carefully observe this. Then you will know what is the difference between a Sishya and an ignorant person. A Sishya is one who willingly submits for self-correction. He is ready to put in that effort to correct himself. All that he wants is a presence. All that he wants is a presence, that's all. It's not that he goes to the teacher asking for a magical wand that he is going to touch you and everything will become alright. Suresh, Suma apdi touch pannalla, nothing will happen. Because he only says, touch me now, sir. I said, wait, you thought if you touch something will happen. Nothing will happen. In fact, you will start hallucinating that something is happening to you or already happened to you. Clear? That's what people do. They touch and you start hallucinating. What? Something is happening to you or something has already happened to you. Who's a Sishya? A Sishya is one who's willing to go through the process of self-correction, and he needs a presence. And Guru is that presence. That's why he says, in my presence, simply sit. Simply sit, not simply sitting. In my presence, it works. Who's a Sishya? A Sishya is one who willingly submits himself for correction. Correction means ready to put in the effort. Otherwise, you want to borrow his wisdom. You want to live on borrowed wisdom. You have to live on borrowed power. It doesn't work that way. He says, you do it by self. That conversation between this kind of huge guru, big guru, the real guru, and this Sishya, that interaction is called Upanishad. This interaction between this guru and this type of student is called Upanishad. And wonderful is that literature, Upanishad. Wonderful is the literature, Upanishad. You are able to follow? Willingly submit himself for correction. It's not that you submit yourself and you fall off to sleep. You are ready to do the work. But to do the work, you need an inspiration. You need a presence. And Guru provides that inspiration, and Guru provides that presence. In that presence, in that inspiration, the entire thing reveals. And then he says, it reveals itself. I didn't do anything. That's where the Guru says, I didn't do anything. The Sishya says, you did everything. The disciple says, you did everything. The Guru says, I didn't do anything. When the Guru says, I didn't do anything, you should not say, correct sir. Correct, I agree. I only did everything. Correct. You don't say that. You say, the disciple says, how do you say that? Krishna shows that in the Bhagavad Gita. This is what I have learned from my masters. That which is the revealed knowledge to him, he attributes it to his teacher. It's not a borrowed knowledge. That knowledge which is revealed to him, he attributes it to his master, because that's the only way you can pay gratitude to the teacher. Clear? That's the only way you can pay. You say, you do not arrogate the knowledge to. This is what I have learned from my master. You go to the Kena Upanishad. Iti sushruma purvesham, he says. This is what we have heard from our masters. That itself is the oldest now. Who is that master who taught? Who taught them? Bhagavad Gita says, Ahuhu. Krishna says, Ahuhu. Prahur babhuva. Those who, this is what they have been laid out by those who are before us. And he refers to that Upanishadic masters. You go to that Upanishadic master in Kena Upanishad. He says, Iti sushruma purvesham yenas tadyacha chakshire, he says. This is what we have heard from our master. You go to that master, you go to that master, you go to that master. Somewhere you have to hit the first master, no? Somewhere you have to hit the first master. And that first master, that first guru is called Dakshinamurti, and he taught in silence. Not one word he spoke. இவ்வளோ நேரம் குழப்பின மாதிரி இருந்தா கூட ஏதோ looks like okay. Suddenly it went into Because you go backwards, you go. You have to go to some Guru, Adi Guru is called Raksha. You go to the Shiva temples, you will be seeing that form of Dakshinamurti. Murti means form. Dakshina means what direction it is? South. So he is sitting facing the Murti that is sitting facing south is called Dakshinamurti. Avladhan. Yeah. Dakshinamurti not the one who is asking for Dakshina. He is sitting in silence facing south. And 4 students are? And the 4 students. Perfect communication. Perfect communication. That day, communication happens in silence. Now, you have reached the peak of receptivity. You have reached the peak of receptivity when you can receive in silence. Where you can't receive in silence, words have to be used, and words are corruptions. All words are corruptions. When your receptivity is high, silence is, that's where it's very interesting. When you are not in love, silence is uncomfortable. When you are in love, silence is very comfortable. You follow what I am saying? Someone walks in, not saying anything. You feel like, say something, no. Say something, no. Silence is very uncomfortable. When love reaches its peak, both will sit in silence. Not only that, there is a subtle communication. It's a very subtle. Your receptivity is high when you can receive in silence. Where you can't be silent, because you come here 7:30, 7:31, Om Savanavatu invocation, I don't start. You will think what? Oh, maybe he is preparing the points for the talk. 7:35, still I am just not even looking at anyone, looking straight in the vacant air. You start becoming restless. You start becoming restless. Look at the transaction between that Guru and that Sishya. Wonderful is that transaction, where the communication happens in silence. Where you can't be silent, you have to substitute it with sound. Words are empty sounds, meaningless entities. Adi Guru, taught in silence. Even relatively also. See, understand it like this. When you are in real love with someone, just the look of that person you will know what that person wants. You will not go and ask, what do you want? No. If someone comes and asks me, what do you want? I say, I don't want anything. What do I want? I don't want anything. When you are in real love, just to that person, just to the look, it means what? It means your identification is so complete that you are able to receive. You are able to see. Since you are able to receive, you can anticipate and you will be ready to serve. That's the Sishya. Who is a Sishya? A Sishya is one who anticipates and he is ready. He anticipates and he is ready, just waiting for the command. Opposite of that is, even if you ask, people say, "For varsham kaichu paakalam sir." You understand that? Who's a Sishya? Communication happens in Silence. When you are in love, even relatively also if you see, when you are in love with someone, just to the look, you know exactly what the other wants. It means that much alertness is required, that much sacrificial nature is required, that much identification with the other is required. When you are so preoccupied with your own self, wherever you go, you are preoccupied with your own self, you cannot practice all this. You follow what I am saying? A Shishya is one who has this quality. What is that quality? That readiness to, that clarity to anticipate. That clarity to anticipate. See, service is not the doing. Service lies in anticipation. Service is not doing. Service is just the anticipation. Just as the mother anticipates the child's hunger and she is ready with food. She anticipates. That's service. That is service. You don't wait for the other to. Don't wait for just the look is enough. In relation to two people I know, just the look I will know exactly. How did you know? How do you know? How do I know? That's what he is. He looks up now. You should know what he is looking for, what he is asking for. It shows what it shows. At least in the presence of the teacher, you are not occupied about yourself. At least in his presence, you are focusing on. But then, wherever the ego goes, the ego's focus is on self. It will go to the funeral and it will get hurt and come back. It will go to a funeral and it will get hurt and come back. Why? I went there, nobody paid. For the dead body to wake up and say thank you for coming and go back to death. Even then the ego will not get satisfied. The most tiring thing in the wedding is attending to the guests, no? The wedding doesn't tire you. What tires in the wedding is that because you have to make sure that someone is at the gate to receive them. Because just giving invitation alone is not enough. Because if you have given an invitation, that itself implies everything. No. Someone has to be at the door to receive you. When no one is there at the door to receive you, slight insult. But then you say, it's okay. He suddenly becomes so charitable. You will walk in. Even then nobody looks at you. It's okay. You go to the dining to eat. No one comes and asks you, what? How is the food? You want to say it's horrible, but you can't say it. You have to say it's very nice. Is everything okay? Nothing is alright, but then you have to say it is okay. You come back very happy. If it is not done, you will come back saying what? You will come back saying what? Next time I will not go there. They would do well not to invite you again, because you are such a hindrance. You understand? You go to the wedding, you want to be noticed. You go to the funeral, you want to be noticed. That's the nature of ego. He does that impossible thing. In his presence, he melts this ego. So huge it is. This ego which is so strong, stubborn, unyielding, in his presence, it just melts. And once it is melted, forever it is melted. It's not that it melts only in front of him, in front of others it will stand up, na, it's not yet melted, no. In his presence, the whole thing, a Shishya, ready to get corrected. And that correction, there is a communication. Ideally, the best way of communication is in silence. The best communication happens in, but then you are so confused because you are so used to words, so used to talking, so used to words. You are so used to words. And for each and every word you put your own meaning. Why you like words so much is because for each and every word you can put your own meaning to it. It's a wonderful relationship. Guru and Shishya. Wonderful is that relationship between Guru and Shishya. Why it's so wonderful is because the Guru is constantly thinking in terms of how to serve the student. The student is constantly thinking in terms of how to serve the master. That's why it's wonderful. It's so wonderful because the teacher is constantly thinking in terms of how to serve. At this age, he felt sick and I said, Swamiji, why are you doing this? So purely, the purity. Hey, you guys need my service. What can I do? I can't stop because you guys need my service. That's the Guru. He's constantly thinking in terms of serving the student. And what the student does in return? Follow the same principle. What is the principle? How to serve. And you ask him how to serve. And he says, the only service is get rid of your ignorance. He says, the only service that you can do to me is to get rid of your ignorance. Wonderful is that transaction. And whenever the meeting happens between Guru and Shishya, the highest knowledge. That highest knowledge is called Upanishad. So, Guru Purnima, we pay our respects to the teacher. You know that you can't repay. Because he has done the most impossible thing. What is that impossible thing? That ego that stands so erect. That's why it's called Kripa. It's called Kripa. We call it is his Kataksha. It's Kripa. It's just his blessing. How that ego that is standing so erect, refusing to bend. How he enters you, where he entered you, how he made it, and we have no clue to all that. But then he has done that which is impossible, that which the father can't do, that which the mother can't do, that which the wife can't do, that which the husband can't do, that which the children can't do. What everybody collectively does, how collectively everyone destroys you, single-handedly he resurrects you. That's why he's called collective destruction. Single-handedly he has to resurrect you. That's why in the Guru Paduka we say, Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva, Tvameva Bandhuscha Taka Tvameva, Tvameva Vidya Dravinam Tvameva, Tvameva Sarvam Madeva Deva. Correct, huh? when there is a collective destruction, single-handedly he has to stand with it. And we will have affinity towards those who are out to destroy us. And we will not go to that man who is ready to save us. That is our ignorance. We will have affinity towards those who are ready to destroy us. How all other relationship causes destruction? All relationship causes destruction by making you to believe in the unreality. That's how every relationship causes destruction. How single-handedly he resurrects you. You understand the difference? When all other relationship ties you to this illusion, ties you to this ignorance, binds you to this unreality, single-handedly that man stands out, trying to lift you. Therefore, it's not a relationship. Guru Shishya is not it's a very poor term. Guru Shishya is not a relationship. We have to use that word because we know only relationships. Therefore, we have to use that word only. But again, it's not a relationship. What is it? What is it? It's a union. It's a union. It's the merger. Like river entering it's the merger. It's the merger. Last, with this I conclude. Because I have to conclude now. I feel now only I have warmed up, but I have to conclude. All that you have, all that you can offer, he has transcended that. Please understand. He is a guru because all that is valuable to you, he has transcended. Then only he is the guru. If that which is valuable to you is valuable to him, same level. Then he is not a guru. He is out to scratch your back, you will scratch his back, and there is a wonderful way of going down the drain. Therefore, Guru Dakshina is what? You cannot offer him Dakshina because all that you have is meaningless to him. But offer, because it is meaningful to you. But offer. When I say offer, not to me, please. I am not saying that. Because it's meaningless to him, but meaningful to you. Meaningful to you. That's where in that poem, that Sufi poem, he says, in that marketplace, he screamed, "Bring out your best clothes, for God is coming tomorrow, 5 o'clock. Bring out your best food, bring out the best footwear." Everyone brought the best to the marketplace. And they asked, where is God? Because we have brought the best to offer. Bring out your best, bring out your best, bring out your best. And everyone brought their best. He stood on the tower and he said, "I am God." They crucified him. Because you can't. So what is Dakshina? Because Guru Purnima concludes with Guru Dakshina. What is Dakshina? That which is useless to him, but that which is meaningful to you. What is useless? Because he has transcended all that. Then only he is a Guru. So, when you offer, all offering must be backed with understanding. All offering must be backed by understanding. Then only it is offering. then only it is offering. What is that offering? What is that understanding? That understanding of na mama. That understanding of na mama. In the ritual, we practice that. In the rituals, when we give the dakshina to the priest says, na mama cholungo. He also says, na mama. Half an hour back, you fought with him for that. He said 50 rupees extra. No 50 rupees extra and all. I know why 50 rupees. I have to come by taxi. You can take a Ola auto. No, why? Why taxi? Fought with him for 50 rupees. And then you have to say, na mama va. It's a mockery of dakshina. It's a mockery of dakshina. Therefore, Guru Dakshina, the Shishya offers with this understanding. What is that understanding? Na mama. Wherever na mama is brought in, wherever the spirit of na mama is brought in, it becomes yajna. It becomes yajna. That's where the interaction of Guru Shishya is an yajna. It's an yajna. That's why we call the discourses as Gita Jnana Yajna. It's an yajna. The meeting of teacher and student is always an yajna. It is not a discourse, not a classroom. It's an yajna. In that yajna, no one is asked what you offer, what you don't offer. It doesn't matter what you give, what you don't give. All that matters is that attitude, that understanding of na. The teacher says, because he has already eliminated his ego, transcended his ego, therefore he says, mindness doesn't exist at all in him. We have to at least make an effort to imitate that. We have to make that's where he says, na mama, then only he will take. The moment you say mama, he says, don't touch it, because where there is mindness, it is. Where there is mindness, it's mala, it's dirt. Where mindness comes in, it's mala, it's dirt. So when you go to the Guru, you go without the dirt. So you offer without that. What is the dirt? Mindness is the dirt. That's why we say na mama. Why do you have to say na mama? Because mama, mindness is the dirt. So you say, at least to you I am offering without that mindness. If you can practice it with one, you can practice it with all. That's what he is interested in. He is not interested in what he is doing to you, because anyway he has no value for all this. But then it's utmost valuable to you. It's useless to him, but meaningful to you. So Guru cannot be concluded without the Shishya. And Guru Purnima concludes only with Dakshinana. You need to know what that is also. So I said, what is Guru? Who is Guru? Who is a Shishya? And how the Shishya offers to the Guru Purnima concluded.